I'm a great believer in providence, and I don't think there's any
Hmm.
question that the Constitution was divinely inspired. I know you're not supposed to say that today, but I just have no doubt about that.
Well, you can say that on our show for sure.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint Necro. Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
Meet the Pressers is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Henry Repeating Arms, made in America or not made at all. XS Sights, fast sights in any light. Meet the Pressers is also brought to you by these fine companies, shows, organizations, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Pressers. Meet the Pressers is a safe place for trigger pressers to congregate and talk about guns, gear, gadgets, training, political activism, and religion. My name is Klint Macro, and my esteemed colleague Matthew Mallory is going to introduce our very special guest.
Yeah, we got a very special guest today. We've been working on trying to get him on for a while. I've known him for many years. We've collaborated on things in the past and had drinks together. Our DA here in Onondaga County, where I'm out of, William Fitzpatrick. He's been there for many, many years, and we'll get into that. And we're glad to have you, sir.
Matt, thanks for the invite. And you're right; it's been so long; our schedules were conflicting there.
Absolutely.
I consider you my 51st assistant DA because you're so knowledgeable about gun laws and what's legal and what's illegal. And I'll tell your listeners and viewers that if I have an issue, I usually call you for for free advice. You got to start charging me one of these days.
Well, I appreciate that. That's definitely means a lot. Means a lot to hear you say that. So now, so how long have you been in your position?
I'm not going to give you a long-winded answer, but I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My dad was a New York City cop, so I'm kind of an anomaly. I wanted to be a prosecutor since I was 11, and I wound up going to Syracuse University, fully intending to go back to Brooklyn, and went to SU Law and got a job with the local DA at the time in 1975 as an intern. And stayed in the office until 1986. I was the youngest chief assistant DA in the history of the county, became the chief homicide prosecutor. Went into private practice for personal reasons, had a little disagreement with my boss about some cases, and I thought it would be best to part ways. And then ran in 1991, got elected, and I've been reelected 8 times. Wow. So I'm just finishing up this year, my 33rd year as the elected DA of Onondaga County.
That's amazing. That's got to be a record in New York State, I would say.
Yeah, not quite. There's a good buddy of mine, Bill Grady, was down in Dutchess County. He was DA for 40 years. In a couple of years, I think 1 year, I'll actually surpass Bob Morgenthau, who was a good friend of mine. God rest his soul. He passed away a number of years ago. And Bob Carney, who is currently the longest serving DA in the state, he's over in Schenectady. I can't get the guy to retire, so he's got DA1 and I'm now DA2. So
there you go.
So what took place?
Most of my life, I wind up stepping in number 2. So I it's appropriate, right?
I forgot to tell you.
What took place when you were 5 or 6 years old that made you say, "I want to be a prosecutor"?
That's a great question. So there was this time that I remember like it was yesterday. My mom broke her wrist. My mom was a stay-at-home housewife. So she had 2 boys, myself and my older brother. He's an educator. And completely improperly, illegally, whatever else you want to call it, my dad stuck me and my brother in the back of his patrol car because my mother needed a break. She couldn't handle these 2 maniacs running around the house with a broken wrist because she was in a lot of pain. So I just sat back there and watched the stuff that he had to put up with, the people that they'd stop. And it just left an impression on me, Klint. And I said, man, this is great. And then years later, not a lot of years later, maybe 3-4 years later, my father gave me a book, and it was about the Lindbergh kidnapping case. And no, I was not personally alive when the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped. I did not try the case myself, but I read that book, and it was the most fascinating recitation about a case that still causes controversy to this day. And it involved so much forensic evidence, and I just fell in love with that. The prosecutor's name was David Willentz. He's deceased. I regret to this day that I never reached out to David and told him how indirectly he had such an impact on my life. But I said, I want to do what that guy does. I want to bring justice to bad people. I don't like bullies. I don't like people that abuse children, and certainly don't like murderers. And I'm telling you, just by the grace of God, I wound up becoming the DA of what I think is the best county in the state of New York. I love Onondaga County. We got great people here, and I've been very, very blessed. So, combination of sitting in the back of a patrol car and reading a book, and life can be serendipitous the way it works out.
For sure. You kind of have your high profile case here that keeps getting regurgitated every time he goes up for appeal with Newlander, right?
I got, it's weird. Onondaga County's about, I think we're the 10th or 11th largest county in the state of New York, 500,000 people, give or take. And for some reason, I've had 5 books written about cases that I've prosecuted. I've been on every national TV show there is regarding, I've been on Forensic Files. I've been on 60 Minutes. 2020, I was just interviewed, ironically enough, this morning by HBO about a case that I was involved with. And, it's fun. I like to talk about the cases, but for a relatively small county in terms of, like we're not Los Angeles, we're not Brooklyn, we're not Manhattan. I've been on with these shows a lot, and Newlander is certainly one that I've been on with. His, trying to think where he is now. His state appeals are exhausted. So if I anticipate his next move, he will try to go to federal court. As you guys probably know better than anybody, there's almost no such thing as finality in the criminal justice system for a millionaire. And he may try to get what's called a writ of habeas corpus, which I'm sure your listeners are aware of what that is. And that would be in federal court. He hasn't filed any motions yet, but I anticipate that he will. And he's guilty as hell. The forensic evidence against him was just devastating. It's sad the way he ripped and destroyed his family.
And it was three times, didn't he? 2 or 3 times appeals, and you beat him every time.
Well, the first time I had to try him twice. So the first time we tried the case, and there was a young woman. I won't mention her name, and she has nothing to be afraid of or ashamed of, but I just don't want her to be bothered any more than she already has been.
Yeah, for sure.
But she's 24 years old, and she was texting during the trial. And people say, "Oh my God, she during the trial she had 6,000, 7,000 text messages." Well, that's true. 3 of them had to do with the case, and in each one, and they were all from the same friend who annoyingly was texting her, "What's going on during the trial?" So this young woman texted her back every single time. "This is a very important job. I can't talk about the case." But foolishly, she, according to the appellate division, she misled the court because she was afraid she did something wrong and she was going to get in trouble. So for that reason, they gave the guy a new trial. It still befuddles me, but arguing with a court of appeals decision is completely pointless.
Yep.
That's it. And so we tried him again, and so far the count is 24 jurors guilty and no jurors not guilty, and they reached the right decision. It was the first time I tried the case against Eddie Mencken, who, God rest his soul, he passed away recently. And it's hard for people to understand this, but he was a defense lawyer and one of my dearest friends in the world. And the second trial was against a real classy guy from New York City, and he was very, very well prepared, very distinguished, and tried a great case, but the evidence just won the day.
This is Theresa Inacker, and I'm running for the NRA Board of Directors. And this is Meet the Pressers.
Meet the Pressers.
What kind of things as a DA do you see, or do your ADAs see and come across? What kind of cases do you guys usually oversee and decide whether you're going to prosecute or not that are gun related or even self-defense related?
Oh, sure. Well, let me see. I've been DA for almost 33 years. I think, I may be wrong about this, but I think that I prosecuted one, maybe two, but one that I remember, one individual with a lawfully issued pistol permit for improperly using his pistol in an act of what he thought was self-defense. So that's not bad in 33 years. That's more of a reflection on the responsibility of gun owners than it is on me. I want to tell you the facts of the case. It could have been much worse. Thank God it turned out to be, serious enough to prosecute, but not enough to send the guy to state prison. So this poor drunk guy meets an attractive woman at a bar. They go up to her housing complex up in the northern suburbs. They're going to trip the light fantastic, and this guy's just died and went to heaven, when suddenly she decides that she wants another bottle of wine. Okay, so it's late at night. This poor slob gets in his car. He drives to the place, buys a bottle of wine, comes back. Well, there's like a dozen or more townhouses, and they all look exactly the same. Mm. So this poor guy, who's trying to do what guys tend to do when they have that much to drink late at night, he goes to the wrong townhouse.
Oops.
And he starts beating on the back window, and the blinds are closed, so you can't see out. And this guy shoots him. Oof. And I'm sorry I'm laughing, because as I said, it could have been way more serious than it was. And he clipped the guy. He didn't hurt him that bad. Now, under those facts, that's just not enough for a homeowner to use deadly physical force against some poor drunk guy. Maybe, hindsight, maybe if he had opened the blinds and said, "Hey, pal, you're in the wrong house." We all know the local squeezes. So that guy was probably, he pled to something. He lost his pistol permit. A lot of the cases for lawful pistol permit owners that we prosecute, I shouldn't say prosecute, but that we handle, have to do with airport stops, where, again, we get we get too many of these people. Well, I grabbed my carry-on bag and I forgot my gun was in it. Well, that's really irresponsible. My pistol permit instructor, who used to be an investigator for me, he taught me. He said, "Fitzy, when you're carrying a gun, always be nervous. Don't panic, but just be nervous." And he meant it in a positive way, in that you should be. What he really was trying to say was you should have heightened awareness. So you certainly should have heightened awareness when you take a piece of luggage to an airport. Now, that's about the lawful guy. And we have a protocol out there. We don't prosecute these people. I mean, technically, you could get a prison sentence. There's no way in the world I'm going to put, Joe Blow, who's got a lawful pistol permit and is just stupid. He might lose his pistol permit for a period of time and get retrained on it, as he should. But I'm certainly not going to try to put those people in prison. The other side of the coin, the illegal, which is 99.9% of our cases. We, thanks to the new quote unquote reforms that were passed in New York, I have seen an incredible increase of juvenile gun violence. They, for whatever reason, have gotten the misapprehension or misimpression that if they use a gun during the course of the commission of the felony, that if they're 15 or 16, it means they walk away scot-free. And that's not true.
Wow.
They don't get the punishment they deserve, but those are the crimes that we see now. I just personally indicted two individuals who are going to go to trial. They're part of the Uptown gang. And you're going to see an increase in aggressiveness from my office in dealing with some of these gangs. Their avocation, their purpose in life is to, traffic narcotics, make money, kill other people, and it's got to stop. Got to stop.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the statistics that are used by anti-gun organizations will say that there are children that die because of firearms, and so much of that data is actually youth that are involved in gang violence, and they lump it together there to create an emotional response.
It reminds me of David Muir, who's a friend of mine. I like David very much, but he was one of the moderators of the only Trump-Harris debate. During the debate, David fact-checked the former president about the FBI data. And now we find out that Trump was exactly correct, that the FBI data was incorrect.
Yep.
In fact, violent crime has gone up. And the reason, the statistics that David Muir quoted, there were like 6,000 police agencies in the United States of America that did not contribute data to that report. That's a lot of police. I mean, some of them are small, but many of them are major metropolitan areas. But statistics can be easily manipulated, Klint. You probably know that better than I do. One of my favorite statistics is, gun violence in the United States of America. We're the worst on the planet Earth. We shoot each other every day, gunfight at the old K Corral. Do you know that if you took that, we would go from, I think, number 2 or 3 or whatever we are, if you took 5 cities that have incredibly strict gun control laws, New Orleans, Chicago, LA, I could be wrong, I want to say Memphis, and maybe Detroit. If you took those 5 cities out of that statistic, we go to like 140th. And there's only 200 countries on the planet, and very few of them, if any other than us, have a Second Amendment. So the statistics can be, manipulated to fit the cause that you seem to be arguing for.
I was going to say, one thing that they can't throw away is that the Democrats are the one that run these big cities, and the catch and release.
I have to be apolitical. I didn't want to say that, but
you can say it
because you can say it.
It's true.
Right.
Yeah.
They run these big cities. They've got catch and release. Bail reform, where they basically, tie your hands as a prosecutor. They tie the judge's hands. They tie law enforcement's hands, where they basically give them released on your own recognizance, and then go see a judge. And maybe they don't go see the judge. They jump, don't even go in, and then the judge got to do a bench warrant depending on the severity of the crime.
You know what's even more insidious, Matt, other than the mayors of those cities, are the DAs of some of those cities. The DA of Los Angeles, George Gascon. I've been on 2 panels with him discussing various criminal justice issues. I don't know if you'd remember me from Adam. I could care less. I'm telling you that this guy, the DA of the largest DA's office in the United States of America, is an incredible lightweight. I have never seen a guy so vapid, so void of original ideas, other than, I got to let more people out. And it is an absolute sin. He defeated a very, very dear friend of mine, an African-American woman, Jackie Lacey. And the only reason I mentioned her gender and ethnicity is because she was defeated essentially by George Soros, whose main gripe about the American criminal justice system, prosecutors, is there aren't enough women and there aren't enough minorities. So this degenerate, George Soros, winds up taking out the female African-American DA from the largest city in America and replacing her with this clown. But Soros made the decision, and I give him credit from a political point of view. It was a very, very shrewd decision. He had very, very little success in getting legislators elected with his radical left-wing ideas. So he decided to go after prosecutors, and it shows how much influence prosecutors can have on the quality of life in a community. I mean, these people are running, it reminds me of that old game show, I Can Name That Tune in 3 Notes. And these prosecutors are running with the campaign platform of, I will abolish 12 crimes. You're a lightweight. I'll abolish 15. So what you do is you say to an offender, ab initio, right from the get-go, the crime you're committing is not going to be prosecuted. Now, no one wants to put a 17-year-old shoplifter in jail. Okay, no ethical, decent prosecutor is going to do that if the person has no record and it's related to some issue other than that. But we're going to address the underlying issue of why that individual is in the criminal justice system in the first place. Why did you steal this? Are you just lazy? A lot of times it's just a kid looking for attention. His parents are going through a divorce or whatever. But Soros and his band of prosecutors in many of the cities that I just mentioned, we're not even going to prosecute people. We're just going to let them go with arraignment. And it's terrible. It ruins the quality of life, particularly the quality of life in the communities that Soros pretends to want to help.
Yeah,
the poor,
sure.
the marginalized, the minority communities.
Do you
Yeah, even
go ahead, Klint. Sorry, you got it.
sorry, there's a little bit of a delay today.
Yeah.
Yeah, even with the stats being terribly skewed the way they are, you can look at Philadelphia here, and even with skewed stats, crime has jumped up significantly since Krasner has come in as district attorney here.
Oh,
and he's definitely one of those Soros backed. I'm in Allegheny County, and Zapala is not nearly as bad as Krasner, but he definitely is a bureaucrat.
Yep.
And we see the inactivity, and it does empower the criminal element, especially when they're dropping, men in Pennsylvania. If you use the gun in a violent crime, it's a 5-year minimum. That is never enforced. It's always dropped. It's always given away. But
same in New York. It's 3.5-year minimum, and as much as I will give somebody a break on occasion, like the airport example I gave earlier. But if you're firing a gun, if you're discharging a gun, if you're using a gun for nefarious purposes, unless there's some extraordinary circumstances, like maybe the search is questionable or something like that, you're going to state prison. But speaking of stats, Klint, let me give you a quick stat that I always, because we see this upsurge in violence in the state of New York, and we say, oh my God, how are we going to deal with this? As if it never happened before. Let's go back, not 100 years. Let's go back 30 years. Let's go back to the early 90s in New York. 6 people a day. 6 people a day were being murdered on the streets of New York City.
Wow.
They had over 2,500 murders, I think, in 92 or 3. And there was another person being murdered every day in the rest of the state. So you had 7 people a day being murdered. The overwhelming majority of them being murdered by, illicit gun trafficking and gun use, or people who were just gang members and robbing people or drug trafficking or whatever the particular incident may have been. Then this guy, Rudy Giuliani, I know we can't speak his name anymore. He's anathema to everybody now. He brings in a guy by the name of Bill Bratton. And Bill Bratton is a student of the broken windows. I don't even want to say theory. At that point, it may have been a theory. It was developed by a couple of eggheads, one guy from Princeton, I forget the other gentleman, but they had this theory that if you took care of low-level crimes, quality of life crimes, you would decrease crime overall. And if you had a constitutionally authorized but aggressive stop and frisk policy, you would seize a lot of guns. And word got around. And do you know that when Bloom, before de Blasio took office, there was less than 1 person a day being murdered in New York City, and that's in less than 20 years. That's an extraordinary. I call it the New York miracle. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the prison population in New York was going down. Now think, we've got crime under control. We've usurped the argument about mass incarceration from the left, because the prison population went from 70,000 incarcerated adult males and females to less than 35,000. That's an extraordinary accomplishment. And once the maniacs took over Albany, if you had a magic wand and you were a legislator and you could wave the magic wand and you say, what would be the first thing you would address? For me, it would probably be education. I think our education system stinks. That could be completely separate show, and
For sure.
you need somebody with more expertise in education. But I think when kids come out of school and they can't read their diplomas, we got a serious problem.
Mm.
We have a problem with infrastructure. We have a problem with healthcare. All kinds of issues that need to be dealt with. So what did these maniacs do? They attack the one system that is actually working. Geez, we've gone from 6 murders a day to less than 1 a day in my judgment, the greatest city on earth. We've reduced the prison population by more than 50%. Man, these DAs, they know what they're doing. There's something. No. So they completely gut the criminal justice system. We got bail reform, raise the age, discovery reform. And you wouldn't believe the Pandora's box that they're about to open in the next couple of years. They want to have compassionate parole. You hit 55 of your and you're sentenced to life, but you hit 55 and you've served, in some instances, some iterations, 10 years, others it's 15 years. You're immediately eligible for parole.
That's like prison retirement.
Oh my God!
They get the AARP magazine too.
He's 55. What harm can he do?
So
I prosecute a lot of people in their 50s that commit really serious, heinous crime. But we don't send people to prison solely to incapacitate them. Sometimes we send them to prison for retribution. Victims are entitled to retribution. We have deterrence, we have incapacitation, we have rehabilitation, but there's retribution. The fourth prong of why we send people to state prison, and people just ignore that. I mean, should Jeff Cahill, who beat his wife into a coma with a baseball bat, and then 6 months later snuck into her hospital room and poured potassium cyanide down her throat so she wouldn't testify against him, should he ever see the light of day?
Nope.
Absolutely not. But under this law, he would immediately become parole eligible. It's sickening. A lot of crimes today, especially retail crimes, don't even get reported because people just shrug their shoulders and say, what's the point?
Right.
Sometimes you don't get a police response, not criticizing the police. They just don't have the man and woman power to respond. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, it's like when the tree falls in the middle of the forest, does that mean there's no sound? Well, yeah, there's a sound, just not there to hear it. And yeah, there's increase in crime, just not getting it reported. So, I hear these statistics about, carjackings are down. Don't tell me carjackings are down. You got people, I live in Lafayette, God's country.
Yep.
First time in my life. I've been here 35 years. Literally first time in my life. I lock my car when I leave it in the driveway at night. Never done that before.
Yeah, we moved in Lafayette about 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago.
I know, and all our property values went down. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
You need to mow your grass more. Let the property values go back up.
Thanks, Clint. Get on it, will you?
The crime statistics, I think it's Crime Stop or Crime Spot. I'd get an email maybe every couple of months saying there was a crime in the area within 5 miles of where I live. And now I'm getting it weekly, like 1-2 different something, a domestic violence, a theft, an assault, whatever within this area on like a weekly or maybe every other week basis. So, I'm seeing that it's, different crimes and stuff are increasing for sure, just here in this little town.
A lot of it, Clint and Matt, is juvenile related.
Yeah. And
under the raise the age law, under the old system, my office would prosecute 16 and 17-year-olds who committed a crime. If prior to the quote unquote reforms, you were 16 or 17, you had a 95% chance of completing whatever program I insisted that you get involved in. 95% chance of walking out of your criminal charge without a criminal record at all. In other words, completely sealed, completely exonerated, but you had to do what I imposed on you. Again, why would you change that system? Because the other 5%, we're talking about robbers, murderers, rapists. And so now supposedly you have these millions of dollars that have been poured into family court for treatment programs, mental health counseling. That's a fiction. It's a lie. It's never happened. Family court and there are some very, very dedicated people in family court, completely inadequately funded and equipped to deal with the influx of these juvenile offenders that they have. And then you couple that with the bail law. The perfect example is you've got, how old was she? I want to say 24 years old, Victoria Affet. She has 5 pending felonies, some of them involving violence. My assistant DA at the time finds a section of the new bail law and says, Judge, this is her 5th felony. At least 3 of them involve personal allegations of personal injury. The judge listens to my assistant DA for about 18 seconds, cuts her off, and says, no, releasing her on her own recognizance.
Wow.
No health, no programs, no pretrial release, no probation. A week later, Victoria Affet at the Skyline Garden Apartments on James Street breaks into the apartment of Connie Turi. I forget Connie's actual age. I think she was in her 90s.
Oh, yep.
This sweet, unassuming educator that was her home. I know it had gone downhill in the years that she lived there, but that was her home, that apartment.
Yep.
You know, guys, there were cops that went to that crime scene that are still not the same since they saw what this woman, Victoria Affet, did to Connie Turi to torture her to get her PIN number so she could get a couple of bucks from a ATM.
Horrific.
And the judge, you know, it criticizes me for criticizing her. And I'm like, what planet am I living on? Do you feel the slightest bit of responsibility for your absolutely horrible, terrible decision? I mean, I can't live with myself if I made a deal with somebody and then the person went out and committed some other serious crime and I was warned about it.
Yeah, that's scary. Actually, one of my neighbors here, he's the maintenance man for that building, and talked to him a little bit about it a couple years ago when it happened, or a year ago when it happened. What kind of things are you seeing with the Concealed Carry Improvement Act, New York State's new law they just passed last September? Are you seeing anything with the sensitive and restricted locations and?
Well, a lot of those you probably know better than I do, Matt. Judge Sotheby's decision was initially reversed, and then it has been, in many instances, reinstated by the Supreme Court. So a lot of I guess practical purposes, I don't want to go through all of them, but a lot of those are not enforceable now. But what I find fascinating about that particular law is look at where mass shootings occur. They occur where the usually, if not always, mentally ill perpetrator can inflict the most harm and damage.
Yep.
Places of worship, shopping malls, schools.
Yep. And
the Concealed Carry Act made it illegal for anyone to carry a gun where the mass shootings are occurring. I mean, you two guys know better than me. I mean, there have been several documented cases of mass shooters in other parts of the country being thwarted and stopped by lawful pistol carrying members of society. Now, I'm a firm believer that with your Second Amendment rights comes great responsibility, and that's why I love you two guys. Matt, I know you better than Klint, but I'm sure Klint shares your views about training, educating. You know, how do you fire a gun? When should you fire a gun? Where should you carry it? And I don't want to see, everybody that walks into the Destiny Mall carrying a gun. But I don't have any problem if I saw Matt Mallory at Destiny USA. I frankly would feel safer. I'd feel good about that. I mean, that's where people should be allowed to carry guns. But we haven't prosecuted anybody for those crimes, and as I said, they're pretty much unenforceable right now until the Supreme Court addresses the decision. I mean, it's almost like the student loan debacle. The Supreme Court of the United States says to the Biden administration, you can't do that. It's unconstitutional. Kind of makes sense that I shouldn't be paying off the loans of Vinny Gombats in Peoria, Illinois, because he wanted to go to hairdresser school, and now
wanna pay it.
he can't pay for his mortgage. I mean, I'm sorry, but you made a decision, pay up your loans. Okay. And then what do? They say, well, we'll do it this way. And that's kind of like with the concealed carry, act. We come out with a series of Second Amendment decisions by the Supreme Court, Heller, and the brilliant decision by Scalia, and the subsequent train of things that are, I don't care what you want to call them, originalist decisions. To me, I think they're common sense, legal, constitutional, well-reasoned decisions about your ability to carry a gun in certain areas. And then the state legislature says, we don't care. We don't care. We're going to pass the Concealed Carry Act. Matt, you and I have talked about this for years. It's I don't know. I'm trying to think of a decent analogy. It's kind of like the state of Israel negotiating a two-state solution with a group of people that want to wipe them off the face of the earth. Okay, I'm sorry. Why would I negotiate and allow you to create a state so you can have more access to obliterate my people? Why do we pass laws that only affect law-abiding people?
Exactly.
I mean, there's no way, and this is not rocket science. There's no way the unfortunate increase in the number of gangbangers that I prosecute. I wish I would love to see these people grow up and be doctors and lawyers and nurses and electricians and whatever else they want it to be, but they have been indoctrinated at a young age that the way to success is carry a gun illegally, deal drugs, and live a carefree life existence. I would love to get them out of that lifestyle, but until we do, my focus is on people that want to just live their lives, enjoy their neighborhoods, watch their children grow up to have better lives than they did.
Well, when you look at the policies of the Democrats in control, specifically the Democrats, one can only deduce that either they are inept or they are waging a war on our country, because law-abiding citizens are inundated with these rules and regulations and laws that restrict their individual rights and liberties, but the Democratic governments in these cities are just letting the criminals run rampant. Like, who are they working for? What is the end game? What is the end goal?
Klint, I go into it with the assumption, and I'm beginning to reassess my assumption, but I go into the assumption that, they got elected, they have a D after their name. I have lots of Democratic friends. You guys probably do too. But I go into it with the preconception that they're people of goodwill, that they really care about the people they represent. But then I get discouraged, and I've talked to some of these people. I was on a panel once with a local senator who she actually said, we were in the south side of the city of Syracuse, predominantly African American community, and she was pandering to the audience, and she said that her vote on bail reform was the proudest vote of her life. And I just sat there. I said, can you really be that clueless? Can you not understand how devastating that law has, what a devastating impact it has had on the people that you're talking to? These people, the marginalized, the people that, they don't have access to, call Bill Fitzpatrick on their cell phone, or to call Senator so-and-so on his or her cell phone. And it is just, I don't want to say it's made me more cynical, because I'm not cynical by nature, but I'm certainly discouraged, Klint, that people don't appreciate the nature and consequences of laws that they've passed. I mean, we discussed that earlier. I mean, the evidence is not, it's no longer in dispute. I remember people say, you can't show any evidence that crime's gone up. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. If you're totally tone deaf and you don't talk to the people you represent, I can show you on paper how devastating these laws have been. And it's very, very frustrating. I'm a great believer. You got a new program, I'm all in. If you can show me it works. You want to try this community outreach program with my tax money? Fine. I'm all in. You want to get somebody out of the criminal justice system? I'm all in. But show me evidence that it works. Don't give me these platitudes about how, the system stinks. It's systemically racist. mass incarceration, all these cliches that people throw around that have no basis in reality.
Yeah, for sure. There was two last things that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
One, when it comes to firearms and then the mental health aspect, where we see these active killers. I like to call them active killers, not active shooters, but if they're using guns, they're still active killers. Do you see a lot of them that have mental health issues? Because the politicians really try to push it towards, the gun's the problem, the gun's the problem. But if we dig down deep from what I've seen in statistics and such, really a lot of these people have mental issues. They've either had, something to do with a sex change or drugs or off their drugs or on drugs. They've got broken homes, etc.
There's just no question about it, man. It's not really open for serious disagreement. And we're not talking about the gangbanger who's trying to control a particular area of the city for narcotics trafficking and illicit, profits from that. We're talking about, as you said, the mass killers or in many cases domestic violence situations. Overwhelming mental health crisis in this country. A lot of it self-inflicted. We over-medicate our population. You turn on a TV show anytime, day or night. I don't know what percentage I'd be talking off the top of my head, but I want to say 50% of the ads are about,
this drug or that drug.
This drug or that drug. I mean, we seem to get along with it pretty good. When I was a kid,
side effects could include death. Yeah, I'll take that.
And they always have some guy who's a speed reader because legally they have to do that. And the guy says, it may cause, pustules and sores and, vomiting and flatulation and, ED and all. I mean, you're going, what? Wait, what did he just say?
Slow. Rewind that.
In all seriousness, there's an incredible mental health crisis. And we should eliminate the stigma of getting treatment for a mental health issue. If I break my arm, I go to the orthopedic surgeon. Oh, okay. But if I'm having a chemical imbalance in my brain and I go to a psychiatrist, we get that stigma away.
Absolutely.
And deal with mental health crises at a much, much earlier age. I guarantee, I wish I'll get to know you guys better as time goes on, but I'll bet that both of you could walk into a grammar school class tomorrow, spend 15 minutes talking about whatever you wanted and say, that kid's got a problem. That kid's got a problem. And I bet the teachers could too. But for some reason, we're hell bent on, we can't stigmatize them. We got to
label them
into the class. We can't discipline them because that's racist too, because we have too many minorities that are being sent for discipline. Why don't we just do it the right way and let nature take its course and get these kids the help they need when they need it?
Yeah, I did a law enforcement training couple months ago, and in there they were talking about all the mental health facilities that have been shut down over the years because the government really wanted to get these people out of there because I guess the pendulum swung one way too far where they were, basically, like old school bloodletting, if you will, doing stuff that was just really not great for people that just had minor issues. So they said, oh, well, that's terrible. So they started closing down the mental institutions and letting people out to self-medicate, and then the problem is they don't self-medicate, and we end up in law enforcement, and you as a DA run into them.
No question, Matt. And a lot of that, with all due respect to former President Carter, a lot of that happened during the Carter administration, where a lot of our mental health facilities were closed.
Well, it's been great. I don't want to keep you for too long. I know you got people to prosecute and family to be with.
It's great talking to you two crazy gun nuts. I know you guys are salt of the earth. I enjoy this more than I can tell you. And of course I say gun nuts as a term of affection because you're anything but gun nuts. You're people that exercise your constitutional rights. You do so responsibly. And you probably may not know it because you don't have a specific person to point to. But I bet with your actions in your life that you've saved lives. And that's a pretty good legacy for anybody.
Appreciate that.
Okay, boys. Thanks.
Super. Have a great night, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. You two guys take care.
Stay safe.
Hello, my name is Klint Macro, co-founder and administrator of National Train a Teacher Day. National Train a Teacher Day is a grassroots movement of volunteer firearms, safety, first aid, and defense instructors that offer free training to teachers, school staff, administrators, and those that work with youth in a leadership capacity. We do this every year on National Train a Teacher Day. This year marks the 8th annual National Train a Teacher Day, and we'll be observing it on Saturday, June 21st, 2025. That's Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Over the years, hundreds of volunteer instructors have trained thousands of teachers, school staff, administrator, and those that work with youth in a leadership capacity. If you fit that bill, or if you know someone that does, we encourage you to visit or have them visit the website, which is nationaltrainateacherday.com, and connect with a local instructor and take advantage of this fantastic free training opportunity. We'd like to thank our volunteers, our partners, and our sponsors for helping make National Train a Teacher Day a success each year. But most of all, we want to thank you, the teachers, school staff, administrators, and youth leaders who take the time to empower themselves with information to better protect those that they educate, and that is our children. Visit the website, spread the word, and we will see you on National Train a Teacher Day, Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Thanks.
There's lots of sponsors that make this show possible, like Mantis, Next Level Training, like Henry, like
XS Sites.
Check them out and give them your business.
Meet the Pressers is brought to you by Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Next Level Training. Makers of CERT training products. Henry Repeating Arms. Made in America or not made at all. XS Sites. Fast sights in any light. Meet the Pressers is also brought to you by these fine companies, shows, organizations, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the show.
Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and click that little bell thingy so you know when the next episode's coming out. Support us on Patreon. Come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time.
Adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.